Hello everyone, this is Venom Geek Media here, and today for this video I'm going to do a bit of a comparison between two films, as you will have guessed by the title, Skyfall and Star Trek Beyond. Now you might be thinking, he's lost it, he's completely gone mad. You can't compare these two films, they're completely different. Skyfall is a James Bond film, it's a spy action thriller, and Star Trek Beyond is a Star Trek film, it is a science fiction film. And yes, you're right. On those levels, you can't really compare them. But there's one thing that makes both these films kind of unique and very stand out in pop culture. And that is that they are both 50th anniversary films. They are both films which came out at the 50th anniversary of their respective franchises to commemorate 50 years of James Bond, 50 years of Star Trek. So really what I'm going to be looking at is, well, how do they compare as celebrations of those franchises, which is kind of what the whole thing of the 50th anniversary is, and really compare how they measure up as 50th anniversary films. So first we'll talk about Skyfall. Skyfall, 50th anniversary Bond film. It had a lot of hype around it. Massive amounts of build-up and hype. People were really looking forward to Skyfall. It looked really good. Everyone was very excited. The marketing around it was huge. You could tell this was the 50th anniversary of Bond. There were Heineken adverts with James Bond. There were Coca-Cola adverts with James Bond. There were blinking phone adverts with James Bond. It was just, Bond left, right, centre, and all tying into Skyfall. So it really did. It felt like a big event. It wasn't just a movie, it was an event. The 50th anniversary of Bond. And kind of looking at the background of Bond, it kind of is in an interesting place. In many ways, it's the new golden age of Bond, or many people would say that the Craig era is the new golden age, with things like Casino Royale and Skyfall. The first golden age obviously being Connery. I don't think anyone's going to dispute that. And this is kind of the new golden age, and it mirrors back to that. To its sort of time of mass popularity. Bond has never been as popular as it is now, and I mean that's partly due to population increases, but Skyfall is the highest grossing Bond film ever. I think it was also the longest, which really surprised me. But it was really good. Critically, it was superbly well received. Everyone said it was great. Everyone loved it. It was the best Bond film ever. And actually, I agree with that statement, that it is, do I? Or Casino Royale. But it is certainly up there. And I think most people would say that. It is the definitive Bond film. Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing, is that it packed in references to previous Bond with the Aston Martin and the Komodo dragons, all that sort of thing. It felt like a very Bondy Bond film, which was very good for celebrating 50th anniversary. It's a great way of commemorating and all things Bond. And so I think it did it very well. As well as that, though, Skyfall did bring something new to the table. In terms of its way of doing the story. Previously the story in Bond has been very removed, very much go to this country and do this investigation, blow up this villain's evil lair, all that kind of thing. Skyfall was very different in that it was a much more personal story, and it brought a much more personal and emotional depth to the Bond franchise, which made it stand out. It wasn't just a really polished, it meant that it wasn't just a really polished Bond film, it was something more than that. It was a really polished Bond film with more than that. It was, you know, Goldfinger plus some more. And it celebrated all of modern Bond and all of old Bond as well. So, yeah, I mean, that was Skyfall. And as a 50th anniversary, yeah, I mean, I can't think of anything better to celebrate. Now, let's talk about Star Trek Beyond. Star Trek Beyond's a little bit different, or a little bit awkward. Well, partly because Star Trek isn't a film franchise. Well, it is, and it isn't. It's both film and television. Two very different formulas. And two very different medias. Generally, the rule with and it's hard to define eras. There's so much variation in Star Trek, and it is packed with so much lore. Unlike the Bond films, where you can really chop things up and find things isolated within a single film. Star Trek's very different in that, it's scattered around the place. So in that way, it's quite difficult to compare. But we have to try, because, they are both films still, and they are both 50th anniversaries. So, I find it interesting, for starters, that there was a 50th anniversary film, that they went for a film for the 50th anniversary. I suppose that's just because that was what was going at the time. And Star Trek has fluctuated a lot over the years, similarly to Bond, but in a different way. Star Trek has had, been on and off. So we had, the original series, which was very popular, very groundbreaking, and we had the films, and they were fairly popular. I think they mostly had a cult following. And then you had the Next Generation, and that was a massive breakthrough. That was very big in pop culture, I think, and that was much more popular than the original series. And then we had spin-offs such as Enterprise, Voyager, Deep Space Nine, as well as the Next Generation films. And these spin-offs varied. Some were good, some weren't so good. The Next Generation films were okay. Well, no, most of them were quite good, but Nemesis wasn't so good. And it kind of came to an end, really, after the end of Star Trek Enterprise. We were all in a bit of a puzzle to what to do with ourselves. Then we hear that J.J. Abrams is directing a Star Trek reboot. Now, I don't know, maybe this is a subject for a different video. Actually, it is. Whether or not a reboot was needed is something for a different video. Fact of the matter, he did. And when the first of the new Star Trek films came out, I, as a more hardcore fan, wasn't so keen on it. It was very... It just didn't feel like Trek. It had a Star Trek look, but none of the feel of Trek. And it felt in many ways very generic. It was good, and it was very popular. The film was very popular, and it was a good action film, I have to say. But I feel that it improved upon but the franchise improved on itself in every way. With the second film, Into Darkness, which built on the lore, it felt more Star Trek. Then J.J. Abrams left to direct Star Wars, and we were like, oh no, what are we going to do? Who can direct? And we get Justin Lin as director, the director of the Fast and Furious movies. Couldn't be you would have thought, couldn't be a worse choice for director of a Star Trek film. And then Simon Pegg as a writer, who I really like. The original script they penned was rejected because it was too Star Trek. I'd be very interested to see that original script. So they went and penned another one, and that is actually Star Trek Beyond was my favourite of the new films. It's not my favourite of the films. It still loses out to First Contact and Wrath of Khan. But it was good. It was very good. But I don't know. So we have that, and expectations were very low because it was a new director and all this. So expectations were lower. And so in that way, it was great to blow everyone's expectations around out the water. And in terms of, did it celebrate everything Trek? Well, it's difficult, like I say, because Star Trek is so varied. But the second act of the film really did seem to be paying homage to the Trek. In terms of, you have all the people split up. It felt like one giant episode, all the different plots of different episodes mashed into one, and given an overarching storyline. And I thought that worked quite well. And that was a good celebration of, Star Trek in terms of the formula and the format. And the characters as well. They're all very well done by all the actors. I really like Simon Pegg as Scotty. He's different from James Doohan, but actually still very good. I love Carl Urban. There is barely any. It's brilliant because actually he didn't seem that different from DeForest Kelley. He plays probably the closest to his original character. But in terms of the celebration of things Star Trek, well, okay, it's difficult because it's so many and varied, but I think it missed out on some of the smarter, more poignant bits that we got from Next Generation, some of the slower pace that we got from Deep Space Nine. But like I say, it's impossible. And they did put in a nice bit of references in there. There were lots of cool references. And they brought something new to the table with the enemy, kind of, with the swarm ship. That was at least different, and at least it wasn't another just big ship enemy. But in terms of the plot, it wasn't really much different. It didn't bring anything new to the table. But I did like that they referenced Star Trek Enterprise, which is cool because not many people watched that. I watched it, but I don't know many other people that do. But so was a celebration of things Trek. I don't know. Star Trek Beyond feels more like a blueprint. It's a blueprint to make a good Star Trek film that will appease both sides of the fans, but it can't. But it needed more polish, I think, to make it into a great film. And I don't know if you can have both one that will appeal to casuals and one that will appeal to hardcore fans. That would be quite the balancing act. That would be the greatest Star Trek film, I have no doubt. Yeah. And then in terms of like hype around the thing, there was very little hype around Star Trek Beyond. So it didn't really feel like an event. It just like, here's another movie. Oh yeah, by the way, this is the 50th anniversary. And you're like, well, what? 50th anniversary. And also the film was, I think, very much not mired, but tainted. That's harsh, but that's not the right word. But it certainly was influenced by. My viewing of it was very much influenced by the death of Nimoy, which they did they did a memorial to him in the film, and I thought that was nice. That was a really nice thing to do, and they even had a nice nod to George Takei, with Soong being gay, even though he didn't like it. I don't know. I think it was fine. Then there was, of course, the death of Anton Yelchin, who played Chekhov, which is very sad and very tragic. And so in many ways, it's got a very bittersweet. Coming up to the film, it felt very bittersweet, almost. But these are things out of our control, and so But the fact of the matter is that regardless of these events, that there still wasn't much hype built up around the film, and certainly not, no Star Trek themed adverts. I don't know, it might have been different in like the States, but here in the UK there was no massive hype or build up to it. It was just like, here's another Star Trek film. Oh, it's the 50th anniversary. As I previously said. So, from my perspective, is it a good way to... So then, we come to the head of the matter. which is the better 50th anniversary? And if you ask me, Skyfall, because it successfully executed everything that it wanted to do. It celebrated all things Bond. It was the best Bond. They went ahead, they sat down and they said, let's make the best Bond film ever. Let's blow the audience out of their seats, and they did. Whereas with Star Trek Beyond, I feel like, they were just like, they were struggling to get things together, and maybe they were like, let's write the best Star Trek film ever. And then the producers were like, no, we want you to write a JJ Star Trek film. And so they were forced to, rewrite. So yeah, I'd really be intrigued in that script. Maybe they'll pen that for the next one. But yeah, both really set up their franchises, though. I feel like Star Trek Beyond breathed new life to the JJ verse. It gave it a lot more credibility with hardcore fans, and really, caught critics off guard. They didn't expect it to be good, and they really liked it. I really liked it. I didn't think it was going to be that good, and it was. Yeah. And similar thing with Skyfall is that it set out, it was like, okay, this is what we're doing. We have these new team. We have Sam Mendes as director, Craig as Bond, the writers, and they were very comfortable with that. And they said, this is how we're going to do Bond for a bit now. Try and fuse the witty and funny bits with the hard and gritty bits. And that's what Skyfall did, and it kind of just set a tone. So both have set a tone, but I feel like Skyfall did it whilst also being a very successful celebration of all things Bond, whereas I just feel that Star Trek Beyond set a tone and didn't do much of anything else. Don't get me wrong, I like both films, but I feel that Skyfall executed its role as a 50th anniversary film much better. So yes, thank you for listening, and I will see you guys. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.